What if the walls could talk? What if the screams of the past still echoed in forgotten hallways? The rain had been falling all night, soft at first, then harder, as if the sky itself wept for what stood at the edge of town. At the end of a long, broken road, behind weeds that had grown tall and defiant, loomed the remains of Blackwood Asylum. Its gates, once proud and iron strong, hung crooked, rust bleeding down like dried veins. The wind rattled them with a hollow clatter. Imagine standing there now, staring at that gate, the rain soaking through your coat, your breath visible in the cold night. The silence beyond the gate is wrong, too thick, too suffocating. What secrets lie buried within forgotten walls? What memories press against the crumbling stone, begging to be remembered? The asylum had been closed for decades. Patient files sealed away, hidden in government archives no one cared to unearth. Until now. Tonight, those files are open. Tonight, their voices will speak again, and they will not be gentle. Step inside, and the air changes immediately, damp, stagnant, carrying the faint trace of mold and iron. The corridors stretch endlessly, the walls peeling like old skin, revealing layers of paint that once pretended to brighten this place. Footsteps echo, but it's unclear whether they are yours or someone else's. The smell grows sharper as you move deeper. The sourness of mildew, the faint metallic tang of something long faded but never gone. It's as though fear itself has soaked into the bricks, trapped forever. Light flickers through shattered windows, beams of moonlight cutting across the floor. They fall on rusted wheelchairs, abandoned in corners, their wheels frozen in place. A torn straitjacket lies discarded near a doorway, its sleeves stiff from years of dampness. Each relic tells its own story, but together, they whisper louder than the silence. They were here, and they suffered. Every door is marked with a number. Some hang open, revealing rooms barely large enough for a bed. Others remain locked, their small viewing windows clouded with grime. Imagine a desk, deep within the records office of the asylum. Its drawers swollen with age, nearly impossible to open. Yet inside, beneath a layer of dust thick enough to choke on, lie folders stamped with red ink. Patient file, sealed. For decades, these stories have been hidden. Not because they were unimportant, but because they were unbearable. Each file carries not only a name, but a fragment of a soul, pressed onto paper with ink, with trembling handwriting, with medical diagnoses that today seem less like science and more like cruelty. And tonight, we will read them, not just as words on yellowed pages, but as lives, as voices that refuse to be silenced. Their stories will not fade into the dark corners of history. They will be told, and in telling them, the walls of this asylum will breathe again. But beware, because the deeper we go, the more the line between past and present begins to blur. The closer we listen, the harder it becomes to tell whether the whispers are just stories or something alive, something waiting for you to believe. The first file opens with a name nearly erased by time: Elias Hartman. Born 1892. Admitted 1920. Diagnosis: melancholia with delusional tendencies. The doctor's notes are clinical, detached. But the letters he left behind, hidden in the margins of his sketches, reveal the truth. Elias was not violent. He was an artist, a painter. His only crime was grief too deep to contain after the loss of his wife and child to illness. His canvases turned darker, haunted by shadows, until neighbors whispered he had gone mad. The asylum took him in, promising treatment. But in those walls, his brushes were confiscated, his paints discarded, his art became forbidden. Instead, he was given what the doctors called restorative therapy. Long hours in silence. And yet he painted still, with coal scraped from a furnace, with blood from his own fingertips, with anything he could find. The walls of room 12 became his gallery. Figures stretched and twisted, faces with hollow eyes, doorways that opened into darkness. The file notes that guards complained of unease, that some swore his paintings moved when no one watched, that one orderly refused to enter his room at all, muttering about shadows that whispered his name. Elias himself wrote, in a fragment preserved at the back of the file, "The walls see, the walls listen. Every stroke I make is not mine alone. They guide me. They want to be remembered. They want to live again." The final entry in his file is chillingly brief. Patient unresponsive. Declared deceased, 1932. Yet beneath that line, smudged and shaky, is handwriting not belonging to any doctor. As you close the file on Elias Hartman, the silence of the asylum deepens. It presses in, thick and almost tactile, as though the air itself has weight. The single candle you imagine holding flickers, its flame bending, as if disturbed by a breath you cannot feel. Every corridor looks the same, yet somehow you sense you are being guided, pushed toward the next story. The peeling paint forms shapes that resemble eyes, watching. The cracks in the walls stretch like skeletal fingers reaching for you. You pause before a door with faded numbers. 17. The small viewing window is cracked, glass jagged like teeth. Inside, shadows cluster unnaturally in the corners. You almost hear something. Faint scratching, like fingernails dragged along wood. But when you lean closer, the sound stops. File: Margaret Holloway. Admitted 1914. Age 28. Diagnosis: hysteria. Margaret's story was tragically common for her time. Married young, with 3 children by the age of 25. Her husband, stern and devout, described her as restless, prone to fits of imagination. What began as fainting spells and moments of overwhelming sadness was interpreted by the family physician as a dangerous affliction of the female mind. The treatment? Institutionalization. But there's another side of Margaret's file, one hidden in the creases. Pages stained with ink smudges from hands that shook as she wrote. Notes she must have slipped into her folder when no one was watching. They say I am ill, Because I want to live. Because I want more than the cage of my house, the silence of my husband. They think silence cures, but it only feeds the voices here. The walls speak at night. They whisper that I will never leave. Orderlies recorded strange incidents around her cell. Once, they found the word home scratched into the stone floor, though Margaret had no tools to carve it. Another time, they reported that the lullabies she hummed could be heard echoing down the entire corridor, even when she was gagged. Her file ends abruptly, transferred, destination not recorded. But the whisper. Past Margaret's cell, the hallway narrows. Rusted hooks line the walls. Iron rings where restraints once held wrists and ankles. Some are still locked in place, chains coiled on the floor like snakes asleep. The further you walk, the heavier the air becomes, until every breath feels like swallowing dust. You feel the faintest vibration beneath your feet, as if the ground remembers footsteps from long ago, shuffling, dragging, resisting. Then you notice it, the faintest whisper of a name, not spoken aloud, but breathed against the inside of your ear. Too soft to catch the word, too close to deny. You turn, but the corridor stretches empty behind you. Something is guiding you to the next door, to the next file. File, Thomas Avery. Admitted 1906, age 9. Diagnosis, moral insanity. A child. That is the first horror of his file. Not what he did, but how quickly society deemed him broken. Thomas was described as unruly. He spoke back to teachers, resisted punishment, and once was caught wandering the woods alone at night, staring at the stars when he should have been asleep. His parents, strict and fearful of judgment, sought help. The asylum promised correction. Instead, Thomas was placed in Ward C with grown men and women whose minds had fractured under unbearable torment. The records claim he was difficult, that he refused to follow orders, that he laughed when punished, and whispered secrets to shadows in the corner of his cell. One doctor wrote, "The boy's imagination borders on possession. He insists. Staff grew uneasy. Tools went missing. Keys, scraps of paper, even a scalpel. None were found. Thomas was punished, locked in darkness for days. Yet when they checked on him, he was never afraid. He smiled and once told an orderly, 'They take care of me when you lock me away. They tell me things you'll never know.' His file ends with a single line, 'Patient missing. Presumed escape. 1910. But the asylum is surrounded by high walls, sealed gates, and guards who swore no one could slip past them. So where did Thomas go? And more importantly, who took him?" You turn the page, expecting another patient. But instead, a name leaps out. A doctor. Dr. Silas Wren, chief physician, 1898 to 1922. The file is thinner than the rest, but filled with reports. Rumors of his progressive techniques, methods he defended as science, but whispered about as cruelty. He believed the asylum itself was a tool, a place not just to contain the ill, but to draw something out of them, He wrote, "The mind, when stripped of freedom, reveals its truest form. Here, in silence and darkness, the patient becomes a mirror for forces beyond our comprehension. I have only begun to glimpse them. Patients under Wren's direct care suffered most. Longer isolations, experiments with sensory deprivation. Some were never recorded as leaving his ward at all. His notes grow stranger with each year. At first, clinical observations, then sketches of symbols, diagrams that look more like occult sigils than medical charts. At last, the scrawled confession. The asylum answers me now. It whispers, as it did to Elias, to Margaret, to the boy. I am not their keeper. I am their student." The file ends without explanation. No death recorded, no resignation letter, no transfer. Only a blank page, as though someone decided his story should remain unfinished. But his shadow lingers, and perhaps he still walks these halls. At the far end of the West Wing lies a door without a number. Unlike the others, this one is bolted from the outside, heavy iron bars sealing it shut. No file corresponds to it. No name, no history. And yet, scratches cover the wood. Desperate, overlapping, clawing marks that suggest not one, but many hands over the years. Faint words are etched deep enough to bleed splinters. Don't forget us. The silence beyond is unbearable, heavier than the stillness anywhere else. Some staff once called it the swallowing room. No patient is listed as ever being housed there. No doctor claimed responsibility. But the files hint at something darker. Transfers to special containment, names that disappear from the record. Families who never received notice of death or burial. File: Joseph Clark. Admitted, 1919. Age: 36. Diagnosis: paranoid delusions. Joseph worked as a cartographer before his admission. He claimed he could see structures no one else could. Hidden hallways in buildings, rooms behind walls, tunnels beneath the earth. Doctors believed him insane when he insisted that Blackwood Asylum itself shifted at night. He drew maps compulsively, sketching corridors that looped back into themselves. Staircases that descended into nothing. Doors that opened to brick. But here is the chilling detail. Many of his maps matched the asylum exactly, except for wings no one admitted existed. One sketched corridor ended at a sealed stone wall. But when archivists checked years later, they found signs that a passage had indeed once been bricked. His notes grow frantic. The asylum moves. It is alive. They think it cages us, but it cages them too. It feeds on silence, on fear. It rearranges itself to keep us inside. Final record. Patient missing. Map pages destroyed by order of Dr. Wren. But one page survived, tucked Deep in the folder, a sketch of the asylum's outline, yet drawn not as a building, but as a human form, curled inward, consuming itself. As you close Joseph's file, something changes. The whispers that have been faint until now grow sharper. You hear your own name breathed from the darkness, not by a voice you recognize, but by many, layered atop one another. The files on the desk shuffle as if moved by unseen hands. Pages flutter. A draft chills your neck, though every window is sealed. And there, carved faintly into the wood of the desk itself, you see words not present before. Keep reading. Don't leave us. Your candle sputters. The flame nearly dies, but when it steadies, the words are gone. Only the faint grooves remain, too deep to be imagined. Among the last folders, one stands out. No name, no date, only the words. Subject continues. Inside are scattered notes written in different hands, spanning decades. Some are in neat script, others in frantic scrawl, but all describe the same figure, a tall silhouette glimpsed in the hallways, sometimes mistaken for staff, sometimes for a patient, never accounted for. One entry, dated 1927. He passed me in the corridor, and I greeted him, thinking him a fellow doctor. But when I turned, he was gone. The candlelight showed no shadow at all. Another, 1941. The children speak of the tall man. They say he stands at the foot of their beds, whispering questions until they fall asleep. The files grow thin. Dust rises as you shut the last drawer. And then, from the corner of your vision, movement. A door across the hall, opening, though no one touched it. It leads downward. Steps carved in stone, spiraling into the dark, beneath the asylum. The candle in your hand flickers wildly, fighting against a draft that smells of rust and something older, something sweet and rotting. Each step groans beneath your weight. The walls close tighter, pressing in. Inside, the room is lined with shelves, stacked high with files not recorded in any archive. Thousands of them, folders crammed with names erased from history. The candlelight dances across labels, undocumented, suppressed, lost. But these files don't wait to be opened. They fall from shelves, scattering across the floor, pages spreading like wings. Words rise from them, not read, but spoken, in dozens of voices overlapping, demanding to be heard. You clutch one file, though it burns cold in your hands. The cover bears no name, only a single phrase. Whoever reads becomes part of us. The voices grow louder, louder, until you can no longer tell where the asylum ends and where you begin. The candle dies. Darkness consumes everything. And then, a voice, clear, sharp, as if spoken directly into your ear. This is only the beginning. The walls shudder, the shelves rattle, and as you stumble back, a handprint appears on the inside of the door, fresh, wet, pressing outward. You flee up the stairs, the echoes of countless whispers chasing you into the night. But the files are awake now. The voices have been unsealed, and they will not rest until every secret is told. Dot. The rain has stopped, but the asylum is never quiet. The walls hold too much. As you return to the West Wing, the silence doesn't comfort. It pulses, as though the building itself waits for you to speak first. Every step seems to fall into rhythm with a faint, delayed echo. The air is colder now, heavy with the weight of voices that want to be remembered. You pass doors with their numbers almost erased by time. Some you've seen before. Others you swear weren't there last night. And then, faintly at first, you hear it. Not screams, not sobs, but the soft murmur of people whispering at once, like a congregation reciting a prayer no one wrote down. The files have been opened, and now they want to tell you their stories. Patient Adrian Locke, admitted 1923, age 31. Diagnosis: auditory hallucinations. Adrian had been a violinist of some renown. His performances were described as achingly beautiful, each note drawn from strings as though he was pulling sorrow itself into sound. But after his wife's death in childbirth, Adrian changed. He claimed the music followed him, that he could hear unseen orchestras playing through the night. Neighbors reported he would stand for hours in the street, bowing to music no one else could hear, sometimes conducting with frantic gestures. When the melodies turned violent, discordant, shrieking, he screamed to silence them. The asylum was called. Inside, he begged for an instrument, but the doctors denied him. He began to tap rhythms on the walls. Adrian's file notes his obsession with writing down music. Pages upon pages of notation, most of it incomprehensible, filled his cell. Yet when studied later, some sequences matched ancient chants used in monasteries long before Adrian's time. The final report: patient died following violent seizure, 1928. But on the last page of his folder, in handwriting unlike his own, are the words, "The orchestra has not finished. The concert continues." And sometimes, in the asylum, if you listen closely, a violin plays where no one stands. You follow the faint trail of sound down a hallway you don't remember. The air grows sharper, each breath colder. And then you find it. A room filled with broken instruments. A piano with its keys shattered like teeth. Violins without strings. Drums split open, their skins torn. On the far wall, someone has scrawled notes in coal. A jagged melody that seems to pulse when you stare too long. And then you hear it. A single violin note, drawn slow, aching, vibrating in the air. The room is empty, but the sound continues, winding around you, a melody that grows richer, darker, until you feel it press against your chest. The files are not silent anymore. They play their truths. Patient. Clara Whitfield, admitted 1907. Age 24. Diagnosis: obsessive compulsion. Clara worked as a seamstress in a textile mill. Precise, quiet, skilled with her hands. But after losing her infant to sickness, her grief transformed into obsession. She sewed constantly. Clothes, dolls, anything to keep her fingers moving. Her husband reported she would sit awake all night, stitching until her fingers bled, muttering prayers that the fabric might breathe. In the asylum, she was given scraps of cloth to occupy her nerves. Soon, nurses found her dolls hidden under her bed. Too many dolls, each one stitched from hospital rags, buttons for eyes, mouths sewn shut. At first, harmless, they thought, until the dolls began to appear outside her room. Clara grew violent when they tried to take the dolls away. She screamed that they were her child, that if they cut them open, they would bleed. Her file ends with a strange addendum. Patient missing. Room empty, but dolls remain, all staring at the door. Down another corridor, you stumble upon a room where broken furniture is piled high, and scattered among it, dozens of small, handmade dolls. Their button eyes glint faintly in the dark. Their heads all turned toward you. You tell yourself they are lifeless, cloth and thread. But one tilts slightly, though no wind blows. Another leans forward, as if listening. You back away, the air thickening with the faintest smell of fabric burned long ago. The door creaks, and you swear you hear the soft sound of thread pulling tight through cloth. The dolls are still being made. Patient. Reverend Samuel Gray, admitted 1911. Age 45. Diagnosis: religious mania. Before his admission, Samuel was known as a fiery preacher in a small rural parish. His sermons grew more intense over time. He began shouting not of salvation, but of voices hidden in the earth, demanding worship. Parishioners reported he spent hours digging behind the church, claiming he would unearth the oldest truth. When brought to the asylum, he carried a Bible in which every page had been scratched over with strange symbols, spirals, and marks pressed so deep the paper tore. He refused to eat unless food was placed upon the ground as an offering. Doctors noted he prayed endlessly, but not to any god they recognized. His mutterings mentioned the hollow choir. His final sermon, delivered to no one in the asylum courtyard, ended with the words, "The asylum is not a house for the broken. It is a temple, and I am its prophet." The file states he perished in his sleep weeks later, but his cell wall bore fresh writing the following morning. I will rise when the choir calls. Guided by the echo of memory, you find the asylum's chapel. The stained glass is shattered, the altar overturned. Dust coats the pews where once the faithful sat. But etched into the stone floor are spirals, circles within circles, carved so deeply they could not have been made with the tools of patience. You kneel closer, tracing one line with your finger, and the air grows colder. The silence here is not empty. It hums, low and resonant, like a choir warming their voices. And for the briefest second, you think you hear words beneath the hum. Not English, not anything human. You step back. The chapel is only stone and dust, and yet you feel you've interrupted a service still in progress. Patients, Eliza and Edith Monroe, admitted 1902, age 14. Diagnosis, shared psychosis. The Monroe twins were inseparable from birth, speaking in unison, finishing one another's sentences. Their parents brought them to the asylum when their games became disturbing, claiming to predict deaths in the village, reciting dreams of coffins that later proved true. Inside, they were placed in separate rooms. But separation only made things worse. Nurses reported hearing them whisper through the walls at night, though their cells were far apart. Their voices overlapped perfectly. No echo, no pause. One orderly wrote, "They do not converse, they recite," as though repeating lines spoken to them from somewhere else. Stranger still, each morning, they woke with identical bruises, shapes pressed into their skin like handprints. No one entered their rooms. No one confessed to touching them. The file ends grimly. Both patients deceased, same hour, same breath, cause undetermined. But the last page contains a photograph. Two figures in hospital gowns, standing side by side, faces blurred, hands clasped. Across the image, scratched into the surface, is a single word: together. You pass a long hall filled with tiny beds lined against the walls. Dust-covered toys rest on shelves, wooden blocks, dolls, tin cars. But the toys aren't scattered. They're arranged in patterns, circles, lines, like ritual markings made not from chalk, but from playthings left by small, trembling hands. A music box sits at the center of the floor. Its crank turns slowly on its own, though no hand winds it. A lullaby drifts out, a same melody Margaret Holloway once sang to her children. And just for a second, you see them. Two shapes, small and pale, sitting on one of the beds, watching, waiting, then gone. Patient Henry Pike, admitted 1935, age 42. Diagnosis, somnambulism with violent tendencies. Henry was a dock worker, strong and quiet. His family admitted him after a series of incidents. He would vanish in the night, only to be found standing miles from home, asleep, eyes open, lips moving without sound. In the asylum, guards reported he walked the halls in his sleep, never colliding with walls, never needing light. Once, he was discovered in the records room, standing before patient files, pulling them from shelves at random. His eyes open, yet unseeing. Doctors attempted restraints, but Henry broke them without waking. They tried sedatives, but his body resisted. In one chilling report, 3 guards followed him as he descended into the asylum cellar. There, he stopped before a bricked wall and pressed his hands against it. His lips moved. The guards swore they heard whispers on the other side, answering him. The file ends with a blank page, save for 3 words written faintly across it. He still walks. The deeper you go, the more the building shifts. Corridors bend where they should end. Doors open into rooms that shouldn't exist. The moonlight no longer reaches through broken windows. Outside feels further away, as though you've descended beneath the earth itself. And all the while, voices gather. Faint, layered, insistent. They call your name now, not just in whispers, but in tones. Low, high, overlapping. An orchestra of those long dead. The files aren't simply records anymore. They're invitations, and each one you open pulls you closer to something the asylum has waited decades to reveal. Patient Victor Hale, admitted 1922, age 36. Diagnosis: visual hallucinations, obsessive artistic compulsion. Victor was a landscape painter of some renown. His wife reported that after a head injury, he began refusing to paint nature. Instead, every canvas, every scrap of paper, even the asylum walls, bore the same subject: doors. They were not doors found in any building. Some opened into caverns, others into endless staircases. One canvas showed a door suspended in blackness, ajar, with something reaching through. When questioned, Victor answered calmly, "They are all real. I am only remembering them." He begged staff not to cover his paintings. He claimed each door led somewhere, and if he stopped painting, the ones on the other side would grow impatient. One night, he vanished from his locked cell, the only trace left behind, a door painted on his wall. You find the room. A rusted plaque still reads V. Hale. Inside, the stench of mold suffocates, but on the far wall, still visible beneath decades of decay, is a painted door. Faded, yes, but intact. Its outline shimmers faintly in the dark, as though lit from behind. Your instincts scream to step closer, to press your palm against the cold paint. But just as you near, something taps from the other side. Once, twice, then silence. You leave the ring, quickly. Patient Clara Devine, admitted 1898, age 9. Diagnosis: dissociative episodes and extreme withdrawal. Clara was found wandering the countryside alone, unable to explain where she came from. Taken in by authorities, she was placed in the asylum after refusing food and speaking only in whispers. She avoided other children, instead climbing into the attic and refusing to leave. There, she drew endlessly in charcoal on the beams and walls. The drawings were not childish. Dark towers, faceless figures, skies filled with black suns. Staff who tried to move her reported violent fits of strength far beyond her size. When questioned about her drawings, she replied only, "They show me." After 3 years, Clara vanished. The attic remained sealed ever since, with a note in her file. You climb the final staircase, boards creaking underfoot. The attic door is chained, rust eating into the links. But on the wood, scratched deep, are drawings. Hundreds, spirals, faceless shapes, hands reaching. And in the center, the name Clara. Something stirs inside, a faint dragging, like tiny feet across dust. The chain rattles. You turn back before it snaps. Patient, Elias Moreau, admitted 1917, age 51. Diagnosis, compulsive hoarding, psychosexual fixation. Elias worked as a gravedigger. Arrested after police found boxes of human teeth in his home, some ancient, some freshly pulled. When asked why, he answered, "They're not trophies, they're keys." In the asylum, he continued the practice. Staff discovered teeth hidden in his bedding, under his tongue, even sewn into his clothes. He insisted the asylum itself demanded them, that the walls would not open without proper offerings. Final note in his file, found in cell, throat packed with teeth not his own. In the asylum's basement, you stumble across wooden crates. Inside, thousands of small objects, rattling faintly. Teeth. Each one labeled in neat handwriting. Names scrawled across slips of paper. Some names match the files you've read. One crate remains open. A tooth lies apart from the rest, still red at the root, though it must be over a century old. You do not touch it. The files grow heavier in your hands. Each name bleeds into the next. Each voice you read begins to overlap in your mind. You step into a ward where the paint has peeled in long strips. Beds lie twisted, frames eaten by rust. Yet in every bed, the sheets are folded as if awaiting their occupants. The air trembles with 1,000 whispers. They are not separate anymore. They blend, rising, cresting into something like a chant. The words are not yours, and yet you understand. They are not stories. They are invitations. And the asylum is waiting for you to accept. You follow the whispers down another corridor until you find a set of double doors, swollen with damp, but still marked with faded paint. Chapel. Inside, rows of broken pews face a crumbling altar. But what chills you isn't the decay. It's the fact that every bench is filled. Not with people, with mannequins. Crude, life-sized figures stitched from sheets and hospital gowns, stuffed with straw, heads made of paper mache. Each has teeth painted on in black. And from their mouths, the whispering continues. One mannequin's head slowly turns toward you. You slam the door shut. Unlike the others, this file isn't about a patient. It's written by one of the asylum's own doctors, Dr. Emmett Hargrove, Chief of Psychiatry, 1920 to 1933. His notes grow stranger with every page. The patients are not delusional. They are perceiving frequencies beyond our range. The building resonates with them. It hungers. It selects. I hear them too, in the walls. They are teaching me. The last entry, scrawled in shaky ink. We are the patients now. The doors creak open into a circular room. Tiered seating rises in a half ring above a central table. Rusted metal, straps still bolted to its sides. Dried stains mark the floor beneath. On the walls, old surgical instruments remain hanging. Saws, drills, clamps, each one tagged with a yellowed slip, as though still in catalog. And carved into the wooden seats, scratched deep by dozens of hands, is the same word repeated again and again: stay. The longer you stand in the theater, the louder the chant grows in your head. Stay, stay, stay. In the far corner of the theater sits an antique phonograph. Its horn is cracked, its crank broken. Yet as you approach, it begins to spin. A voice plays. Not music, not static. A man's voice, distorted, whispering. Do you see now? They were never sick. They were chosen. And you are reading this because you are chosen too. The record scratches. The voice continues, slower, deeper. We will finish the work together. The needle grinds to silence. You enter what appears to be a therapy room. A broken mirror leans against the far wall. But as you step in front of it, the reflection doesn't match. The room behind your reflection is whole, the walls clean, the bed made. And in that room, you see someone sitting on the chair. It's you, but not. They smile. You do not. Their lips move, but no sound comes through the glass. Only the whispers, rising, rising, until they drown every thought. You stumble back. The mirror cracks. Your reflection does not. You stagger into the hallway, clutching the files, your pulse hammering. The asylum isn't a ruin. It's alive. Every case, every whisper, every door, every eye in the walls, they're threads of one thing. Something that reached through its patients, and now through you. The files slip from your hands. Pages scatter across the floor. For a moment, they flutter like wings. And then silence falls. A silence so complete, so crushing, that it feels deliberate. The asylum is listening. And in that silence, you finally understand. This is only the beginning. At the far end of the West Wing, you discover an old freight elevator. The cables above sag with rust. The buttons are cracked, their labels long gone. And yet, when you press one, the doors groan open. Inside, a single bare bulb flickers. A faint hum echoes from below, like machines running deep underground. You step inside. Against every instinct, you press down. The doors close. The elevator shudders, then begins to descend. The asylum has basements, but this is deeper. The elevator halts with a violent jolt. The doors screech apart, revealing a passage lined not with stone, but with steel. This part of the asylum isn't in any blueprint. You follow the corridor to a room filled with rusted equipment. Operating tables, strange glass tanks, their insides lined with sediment. Some still contain fragments, what looks like bone, what looks like flesh. On the wall, a massive chalkboard. Equations, diagrams of the human brain, and something else. Not science, not medicine. Symbols, circles, lines intersecting at impossible angles. You realize? This wasn't therapy. It was ritual, conducted in the language of science. In the corner, stacked in metal canisters, are dozens of reels of film. One is still threaded through a dusty projector. You crank it to life. The machine rattles, light flickers, and the film plays on the cracked wall. Grainy black and white images fill the room. Patients strapped to chairs, doctors in masks, lights flashing in patterns. Then the patients begin to seize. Their eyes roll back, mouths open. But instead of screams, something else pours out. Words. In unison. Same phrase. Repeated. We open the way. We open the way. We open the way. The projector jams. Film burns. And the room plunges into darkness. You light your flashlight again and find yourself facing another chamber. A tiled room. Tables lined in rows. Hooks hanging from the ceiling. Each slab bears a number. Each one empty. Except for the last. A body lies there. Dried, skeletal, wrapped in brittle skin. But its chest rises, falls. It's breathing. Your light flickers. When it steadies, the slab is empty. But the sound of breathing hasn't stopped. It's behind you. Among the debris, a single intact journal, leather-bound, pages filled with cramped handwriting. It isn't signed, but from the tone, you know. This wasn't a doctor's work. It was something higher. The asylum is a vessel. Each patient a key through isolation, starvation, electricity, chemicals. We break the locks of the mind. And when the mind breaks, the voice comes through. They told us what to build. This place is their mouthpiece. We are not scientists. We are translators. The final page is torn out. Only a smear remains. Not ink, blood. At the end of the lab stands a towering glass chamber. Cracked but still intact. Wires and tubes snake from its base, leading into walls that hum faintly with hidden current. Inside the chamber is nothing, but etched into the glass from the inside are claw marks. 5 deep scratches, human. And beneath them, scroll backward, so you read it from the outside. Still here. The hum grows louder. The chamber vibrates. Something is waking. Past the glass chamber, a door marked high voltage creaks open. The room hums with power. Wires coiled along the walls, Tesla-like coils sparking in intermittent arcs. The smell of ozone bites at your nose. On the table, small cages contain objects. Once human, you suspect. Pages from files flutter across the floor, carried by some unseen draft. Scrawled on the wall in chalk, voltage reveals the unseen. Voltage speaks the truth. The hum intensifies. Your hair rises. Patient. Dr. Jonathan Vale. Admitted 1930. Age 40. Diagnosis: mania, obsession with suggestibility. Dr. Vale was a hypnotist who claimed he could unlock hidden channels in the mind. Arrested after a series of patients vanished from his private practice, he was sent to Blackwood. Inside, he continued experiments under supervision, sleep deprivation, forced suggestion, and sensory manipulation. Nurses reported seeing patients entering trance states. You ascend a spiral staircase to a balcony overlooking the old wards. From above, the rooms appear small, insignificant. But when you lean closer, the shadows move oddly, too deliberately. Figures crouch in corners, faces pale, lips whispering silently. The whispers rise in unison when you notice them, growing louder until the wind carries voices through your chest. You turn to leave, but a blackboard leans against the railing, chalk scrawled across in multiple hands. Do not look down. They see you. A chill grips your spine. The balcony isn't just a vantage point. It's a threshold. In a small room off the lab, medicine bottles line the shelves. Many labels are illegible. Others list chemicals that shouldn't exist. One bottle rattles. You pick it up. Inside, a tiny scroll. Unrolling it, you see a diagram. A human brain, divided into sections, with lines connecting to dots labeled consciousness, fear, voice, threshold. A note in tiny, cramped handwriting. Administered incorrectly, the patient perceives the asylum itself. Administered correctly, they become part of it. The words feel alive, crawling beneath your skin. A steel drawer bolted into the wall hums faintly. You pry it open. Inside, photographs, each taken in darkness. One shows a man tied to a table. His face is blank, eyes wide. Behind him, a shadow moves. Tall, thin, elongated, impossible. Another. Children arranged in circles, their eyes black, mouths moving silently. The last photograph. A group of staff in masks, forming a ritual circle. In the center, a dark blur, almost invisible, yet radiating menace. You drop the drawer open. The photographs flutter to the floor. A voice, deep and hollow, whispers behind you. Do you see now? You look up. Old industrial lights flicker erratically. They cast shadows that don't match objects in the room. You realize the shadows move independently, twisting, bending, reaching. Faces appear in them, grim, screaming, twisted into silent screams. You back away. One shadow detaches from the wall and creeps along the floor toward you. The room seems to stretch. The walls lean inward. Your flashlight flickers, and the whispers crescendo into a single phrase. Join us. Among scattered papers, a ledger catches your attention. It lists patients by number, not name, with columns for experiments conducted, sensory deprivation, hypnotic suggestion, electrical stimulation, and threshold activation. Some rows are crossed out, others annotated, responded, transmitted. One page reads, "When enough minds connect, the asylum awakens. We are the voice. The patient is the vessel. Observer becomes part of the process. Your pulse races. The ledger trembles in your hands, as if alive. A hatch in the lab floor beckons. It's narrow, claustrophobic, but you can see stairs spiraling down into blackness. You descend. The air is thick, metallic, carrying whispers so clear you hear your own name repeated over and over. At the bottom, a circular chamber, walls lined with unknown machinery, tubes, wires. Old monitors flicker with static. And then, faces appear, pale and twisted, trapped behind screens that hum with life. The asylum isn't just a building. It is a machine. And it has been watching. In the center of the chamber stands a figure, tall, shadowed, featureless. It doesn't move, yet it radiates awareness. The whispers converge. You feel them crawling into your mind. Memories you don't remember. Emotions not yours. A single thought pierces through. We are waiting for you. And suddenly, the chamber hums. Machines pulse. Lights flash. Doors slam. The asylum stirs. You flee up the stairs, clutching files, heart hammering. The building trembles around you. Whispers chase you from every corridor. The glass chamber, the electric room, the hidden lab. Everything has awakened. And in the darkness, a single chilling truth settles in your mind. The asylum is not abandoned. It never was. And it will not let you leave. The final whisper as you exit the basement. Part 4 awaits. The asylum greets you differently this time. The walls pulse faintly, like they are breathing. Every shadow stretches toward you, as if drawn by your presence. You clutch the files close. They feel heavier than before, each page vibrating slightly, humming with whispers. The rusted gates at the entrance seem farther than before. The asylum has changed while you were below. You take a step forward, and a whisper greets you. You've seen too much to leave untouched. Patient, Isabella Marrow. Admitted, 1941. Age, 28. Diagnosis, chronic hallucinations. Threshold sensitivity. Isabella arrived after claiming she could hear the building breathing. Staff dismissed her as delusional, but she was different. Her file details, she drew maps of the asylum, marking hidden corridors and chambers. She spoke of voices in the walls and lights in the shadows. She refused treatment, insisting the building would punish anyone who tried to silence her. She vanished one night. The room was empty. Her drawings remained, except the final map was missing. Later, staff claimed to see her walking the halls at night, face pale, hands reaching toward unseen things, whispering words. Following the whispers, you reach a wing untouched by decay. The walls are intact, the floor polished, as if frozen in time. Every door is ajar, and behind them, patient rooms, not empty. Figures sit on beds, staring at you. Their eyes hollow, faces familiar. Some are the patients you read about. Some are not human. They do not speak, but the air vibrates with their presence. A name slips into your mind. Isabella. You turn. She stands at the far end, her eyes reflecting decades of torment and awareness beyond understanding. A hidden door opens into a vast library. Shelves are stacked with patient files, journals, and ledgers, but not just the ones you've read. Some appear modern, others older than the asylum itself. The room hums with the combined voices of every file, every patient. In the center, a pedestal holds a single open book, its pages blank. As you approach, words appear, ink bleeding across the paper. You are the witness. You carry the echo. The asylum chooses its storyteller. A chill runs down your spine. You feel every whisper converge. Returning to the main hallway, mirrors line the walls, reflecting corridors that do not exist behind you. Each reflection shows different rooms: the lab, the chapel, the attic, all filled with moving shadows. And in each mirror, the asylum watches. Your reflection is no longer singular. Multiple versions of you reach out from glass, mouths moving silently, whispering your name. You step forward. One reflection tilts its head, another smiles, and the last disappears into the glass. Clutching the files, you find the staircase leading to the main entrance. It seems endless, winding impossibly, stairs folding into themselves. The walls throb with a faint light, like veins pulsing with the asylum's heartbeat. Whispers chase you upward. Each step is harder than the last. At the top, the doors swing open into daylight. The world outside is quiet, almost sterile. You step through. The asylum looms behind you, silent. Yet you feel it watching, waiting. Days later, the files are on your desk. You attempt to organize them, but every page shifts slightly when you're not looking. At night, whispers seep into your dreams. Faces appear in peripheral vision. Doors that shouldn't exist, opening, closing. And sometimes, when the wind howls, you hear it. The asylum remembers. And so do you. A faint scribble appears on one page you swore was blank. We are still here. You stare into your own reflection. Something moves behind it, subtle, impossible. A whisper, barely audible, speaks directly into your mind. Part 4 ends, but the echo does not. Not ever. You are part of it now. And for the first time, you realize, leaving the asylum physically is not leaving it mentally. The shadows will remain. The whispers will remain. And when someone else opens those files, the story begins again.